First of all, I'd ask you please not to refer it to that monstrosity as the big beautiful bill.
It's the name of the bill, though.
We know better. We know better.
Why does it seem like when you make your voting decisions, they're based on capital rather than the working class?
I know who I work for, but who do you work for? You work for billionaires out of state or people in this room? When you look at the bill, this was a middle-class tax cut. This bill is a middle-class tax cut. It's absolutely true.
Why are you covering up the Epstein files?
With 450 million FEMA dollars being reallocated to open Alligator Alcatraz and 600 million taxpayer FEMA dollars being used to now open more concentration camps and ICE burning through $8.4 million a day to illegally detain people, how much does it cost for fascism? How much do the taxpayers have to pay for a fascist country?
Americans went to the polls in November, and they had a choice between a Democratic candidate that had an open border, no enforcement, fentanyl, drugs, human trafficking. And they had a choice between that and a candidate that said, close the border.
That was just a teeny tiny little fraction of the sheer rage that Republican Congressman Mike Flood felt from constituents at his nearly hour-and-a-half-long town hall. Now, just to give you some context, he represents Nebraska's 1st congressional district, which is a very, very deep red district. How red, you ask? Well, Trump won it by 12 points, and Flood himself won it by more than 20 points, and he actually carried every single county in this district. Nonetheless, the overwhelming majority of constituents in this deep red district were not very pleased with the things that they were seeing from this administration. They were outraged about Trump's fascism, cuts to Medicaid, and tax cuts for the rich. In fact, they chanted tax the rich multiple times during this event, and there was even a moment where the crowd chanted free Palestine after Israel came up. And again, these things happened at a town hall in a deep red district. So to say that the political winds have shifted would be an understatement. And politicians like Mike Flood simply cannot keep up or meet the moment, hence why his constituents showed up and ripped him a new asshole when he faced them. Now, you could tell that Mike Flood was genuinely flustered at times during this town hall. He was sweating profusely and didn't really know what to say at times, so he kept awkwardly repeating the same talking points again and again, which led to him getting booed again and again. Specifically, he kept lying about Trump's big bullshit bill, which he voted for, mind you, and he claimed that it protected Medicaid, but as you all know, it does not protect Medicaid. It does the exact opposite. It cuts Medicaid for around 17 million Americans, and it's estimated that more than 50,000 people will die each year because of these cuts. But thankfully, his constituents, they knew that, and they never let him get away with that lie, not even for a second. So I'm going to share some highlights with you from this event, specifically the healthcare portion in particular, because that came up the most. And he just kept saying the same thing, and even though the crowd wasn't having it, it didn't stop. He kept repeating that they didn't cut Medicaid, because what else are you supposed to say if you just did something that terrible? You kind of have to try to defend it, but you can't defend the indefensible, so you just go back to your talking points where you feel most comfortable. But at the start of this town hall, he justified cuts to Medicaid by talking about work requirements, and he thought that that'd get the audience on his side because these talking points typically do work on working class people, but as you're going to see, they're no longer working, and the audience was not having it.
If you choose not to work, you do not get free health care. You do not get free health care. So here's a question. Do you think that people who are 28 years old that can work and refuse to work should get free health care? I don't think that a majority of Nebraskans agree with you. I truly believe this bill protects Medicaid for the future. I believe it. We protected Medicaid. We protected Medicaid.
Why did you cut SNAP and healthcare research?
We do not have unlimited money in the United States.
So how can you justify taking health care away from 78,000 Nebraskans?
As I explained before, when you have an additional $700 million coming into the state of Nebraska for Nebraska hospitals, we have a state where our infrastructure is going to be supported, is going to be funded, and is going to be available for the people that need it. If you are able to work and you're 28 years old and you choose not to work, you don't get free health care in America. If you are in this country illegally, you do not get free health care in America.
What plans does the Congress have for providing reasonable cost health insurance to Nebraskans?
Well, one of the ways to bring down our commercial private payer insurance is to not have as many people on Medicaid.
That was one of the dumbest things I have ever heard a politician say, perhaps ever. He's arguing with a straight face that the way to provide more healthcare to Americans and make it more affordable is to kick them off of their Medicaid. But wait, didn't you say that the big bullshit bill doesn't kick people off of Medicaid? Didn't you say that it protected Medicaid, wink wink? So all of a sudden, it's good to kick people off Medicaid because that's how you're going to lower the costs of healthcare for everyone and give more healthcare to people? So let me get this straight. To give more people healthcare, you take healthcare away from people. And that's going to make it not only like more available, I guess, but cheaper. His logic is just non-existent here. How exactly is this supposed to work? Are we supposed to expect private companies to bring down the cost if they don't have federal plans to compete with? Because I was always told that a public option would drive down the costs because these private companies couldn't compete with the federal government. But if we eliminate the federal plans or gut them, that's going to make private plans cheaper. It makes no sense. What he's saying is completely nonsensical. But the one thing that gives me hope is how the audience resoundingly said yes when he asked if somebody who is 28 years old who can work but refuses to should get health care. Because think about what this looks like in practice. Assume this is the worst person who's super lazy, who just wants to mooch off the government. Like assume we're talking about the caricature that he's trying to prime you to think about. Let's say that this person falls off a ladder and they break their leg. Does that person just have to suffer because they don't want to work? He also brought up undocumented immigrants. Well, same question. If an undocumented person gets hit by a bus, are we supposed to just let them bleed out on the street because we don't want to pay for healthcare for undocumented people? The answer is no. We're supposed to be a civilized society, not fucking barbarians. And providing healthcare to everyone in this jurisdiction is the most basic responsibility of government. The fact that he thinks there are certain things that disqualifies people from getting healthcare that they're entitled to speaks to how cruel he is as an individual. Furthermore, what he doesn't realize is that when people without healthcare get sick or injured, they're forced to go to where? Emergency rooms. Because that's where they're going to get treatment where they can't legally be turned away. And because they don't have insurance, they end up not paying their bills, which not only leads to medical debt for them, but it leads to a loss in revenue for hospitals. And then what happens after that? Well, they raise the costs for everyone else. They pass off the cost to people who do have healthcare. So no, people having no healthcare doesn't make it cheaper for everyone else. You're stupid if you think that and you don't know how the system works. And the most cost-efficient healthcare system is a comprehensive healthcare system, a universal one where healthcare is free at the point of service. And one constituent actually asked him about Medicare for all, and his answer was predictably bad. Nonetheless, I was happy to see this question be brought up to a Republican.
A lot's been talked about Medicaid, healthcare, etc. A lot of countries in the world, Europe, Canada, they have health care for the people there. Outside, just now you said, you don't want to see a lazy 28-year-old get health care, whatever. My point is, every working and retired American should be entitled to health care. Would you sign on or write up a bill for Medicare for all? We've got Medicare now. We can start rolling back the age 5, 10 years at a time. Would you support that?
We can't afford that.
Yes, you can.
Pathetic and wrong. His constituent listed all the other countries who have a single-payer type system, but yet us, in the richest country on earth, we happen to be the only country on the planet that can't afford that kind of a system. Amazing, isn't it? See, it's not that we can't afford it, it's that politicians like him don't care enough to deliver it for us. They would rather let us die than spend any money on helping people here at home. See, we can afford tax cuts for the rich and more weapons for our allies, even though they're committing genocides. But when it comes to helping people at home, sorry, we have to let them die because we can't afford it. In fact, we won't even entertain the possibility of helping them. It is downright despicable, and I am begging people to stop accepting this answer from politicians. I don't care if they're Republican or Democrat. If they say we can't do Medicare for all, they are taking a pro-death position. A pre-pandemic study found that 68,000 Americans die every single year due to a lack of health insurance, and that was a conservative estimate because people who have insurance still die because they're underinsured. So if you say that we can't afford healthcare for every single American, you're okay with people dying. You think money is more important than their lives. And imagine being a Republican who is presumably an American chauvinist who thinks that America is the greatest country in the world, yet the greatest country in the world can't do the most basic thing that every other developed country has figured out how to do and just give their citizens healthcare. Like, we let people die if they get sick in this country, but yet we're the greatest country in the world. I'm sorry, but that doesn't sound like the greatest country in the world to me. It sounds like we're an incompetent country run by selfish fucks who get in office only to enrich themselves at the expense of working class people. And that was another consistent theme at this town hall, this frustration with service to rich people again and again and again, while the poor just gets crumbs if they're lucky. But before we get to that, I do want to play one more clip that's tangentially related to healthcare, because one constituent brought up a whole host of complaints, including healthcare. And the answer from Mike Flood here genuinely made me laugh out loud, because you could tell he was exasperated and didn't know what the fuck to say, so he just repeated the same talking point we've heard again and again.
Trump is a pathological liar, and citizens can't believe a word that comes from the convicted felon's mouth. Keeping Nebraska in mind, what actions are you going to support or initiate that will provide health care and food assistance for low-income families, protect Medicare, not increase the national debt, unmask the ICE terrorists, close alligator Auschwitz, and impeach Trump if he pardons Ghislaine Maxwell?
We protected Medicaid and saved taxpayers millions of dollars from waste, fraud, and abuse.
Oh my God, what do I say? Deep, long breath. Bro, I don't even know what the fuck to say to that, but we protected Medicaid. Okay, what do you want me to say? No, you did not, you bitch. No, you did not. But thank you for saying that again, because it gave the audience another opportunity to boo the shit out of you. But moving on to the next portion, they were very vocal at this town hall about how they thought that the debt crisis that he was fear-mongering about again and again could be addressed. And it wasn't by cutting food stamps or Medicaid, it was by taxing the rich.
We've had this conversation before. As I recall, and we shared this in Columbus, if we adopted the Democrats' plan to tax the rich, if we adopted the Democrats' plan in the last Congress to tax the rich, it would generate $50 billion, which does not take us close to where we're going, and it cuts job creation, it cuts business creation, it cuts the ability for employers to invest in their businesses.
I'd like to know how you expect to pay back all of this debt that is going to be layered onto our grandchildren because we're not willing to make our rich part of our society pay their fair share.
So what's interesting about that, and I think it's a fair question, two things are happening here.
People in here, my comments are about the debt and how we can fix our debt. So tax U.S. stock trades, raise the Social Security cap to $400,000 and the Medicare rate to $200,000, eliminate corporate subsidies, especially for the military industrial complex, appropriately staff the IRS so they can target rich tax cheats, ignore the Grover Norquist contract that you signed and raise taxes on the rich, broaden the tax base by closing loopholes, the carried interest offshore tax havens, and adjust rates on high earners. And there's more, but...
That's quite the Christmas list. You got a lot of stuff on there.
Yeah, maybe you should grab a pen and a paper and write some of that down. But in case you forgot, I think it's pretty clear that the main takeaway is that the audience absolutely wanted him to tax the rich. In fact, if you poll most Americans, they also want you to tax the rich. But they won't do that because these politicians love the rich, because a lot of them are rich themselves. But what they don't realize is that even though these politicians like Mike Flood go above and beyond to serve the rich, they're inadvertently creating even more animosity towards the rich by serving them so shamelessly in front of all of our faces. It's gross. It's like PDA almost. And he hypocritically complained about the debt throughout this event over and over again after he just voted to increase the debt by trillions of dollars so rich people can have even more money. Like, we all see the fucking game that's being played. It's class warfare, but he thinks we're too stupid to figure it out, and Americans historically have been too stupid to figure it out. But for him to parrot trickle-down economics in 2025, like, it feels like even in that district, he should have known that that probably wasn't going to go over too well. And we all notice how he's willing to entertain the benefits of tax cuts for the rich while not even entertaining the possibility of something that would benefit us. Tax cuts perhaps in the form of Medicare for all, for example. He wouldn't even entertain that. We can never afford that. We can't have that. So shut the fuck up about it. We can never have policies that help out the working people, but we can always find more money for the rich and for wars. Like, this is why people are losing faith in capitalism, because they're not even trying to conceal the way that they're prioritizing capital over human beings. It is deeply, deeply immoral, but immorality is one of the hallmarks of fascism, and that also came up quite a bit. So a lot of constituents were alarmed by the ICE Gestapo kidnapping people and by Trump's authoritarianism, and when a different constituent asked him about his complicity with Trump's behavior, he got very, very defensive, as you're going to see.
There's a saying that silence is complicity. Your silence tells us that you have no problem with the January 6th attack on the Capitol, the pardoning of all those involved, the big lie about the 2020 election with absolutely no evidence. These are all markers. These are markers of fascism. I have read a dozen or so books on authoritarianism and fascism. You said in Seward that you were not a fascist. Your complicity says otherwise. Have you ever spoken out against this administration and its Project 2025, which is a fascist machine? Have you ever spoken out? There are a number of people, it's been reported many times in the news that there are a number of our colleagues, Republican colleagues, who do not like this man and they speak against him behind closed doors in private. Maybe you're one of them. There is a thing, profiles encourage. Why don't any of you, because you know better, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you?
Sir, I want to be very clear with you. Fascists don't hold town halls with open question and answer series.
Now, he went on to say that he did condemn January 6th, but what he's missing from that person's question is how Trump systematically undermines democratic institutions. Sure, you can say that you're not a fascist because you hold town halls. That's all well and good, but it seems like the crux of your constituents' concern was about your complicity with fascism and how you enable it. Trump barely tolerates challenging questions, and he blacklists journalists and outlets that dare to ask him tough questions. He also uses the government and its institutions and lawsuits to shut down anyone who criticizes him. He disregards the Constitution and the rule of law. Trump is a quintessential fascist. That is an objective fact. Don't take my word for it. That's the conclusion of political scientists and historians. So it's not debatable whether or not Trump is a fascist, but what the constituent asked was, why are you enabling what we can obviously see is fascism? Because believe it or not, You can still do town halls and be a fascist, because fascism isn't just an ideology, it's a set of characteristics. And even if you don't check all of the boxes, you can still meet enough criteria to be considered a fascist. But it was more about your representative and how you're not standing up to fascism. That's what the constituent was concerned about. And he just didn't address that concern. Surprise, surprise. Now, on the note of fascism, a different constituent brought up how Trump is aggressively targeting educational institutions, and predictably, Mike Flood defends Donald Trump's behavior, as he did all throughout this town hall.
When the current administration attacks my alma mater, Harvard, it attacks Duke, it attacks USC, UCLA, the first place they cut is NIH grants. So why are you targeting? Do you somehow think that preventing cancer supports anti-Semitism, which is the goal of those cuts?
I care about the NIH grants. I hear you. I will say, and this is neither here nor there, some of the institutions that you talked about had a very poor record when it came to anti-Semitism that we saw from their presidents.
I've got to say, I am so fucking sick and tired of this line of bullshit from politicians about anti-Semitism on college campuses. Like, I'm not denying that bigotry and racism and anti-Semitism are present on college campuses, because these are issues everywhere. But when politicians in particular, ones that take money from AIPAC like he does, refer to anti-Semitism on college campuses, they are cynically weaponizing identity politics to slander anti-genocide students. They're claiming that college protesters opposed to Israel's genocide in Gaza are anti-Semitic because they oppose Israel's genocide in Gaza, which is complete horseshit. And ironically, a lot of Jewish students led those protests. And to that constituent's point, cutting cancer research under the pretense of punishing schools for anti-Semitism does nothing to stop actual anti-Semitism, and you just hurt people, including Jewish people, by the way, who benefit from cancer research. But the reason why Mike Flood used that tired-ass talking point is because he is a full-throated supporter of Israel's genocide in Gaza, and that's how he rationalizes his support for an atrocity. And when his staffer read a question to him about this, he used all of the pro-genocide talking points that AIPAC shills use that we've all heard a million times, but thankfully the audience simply was not buying that either.
What specific action are you taking to defund or continued support to Israel and their aggressions on the West Bank and genocide against Palestinians living in Gaza?
I have said from the start, what happened on October 8th was an abomination. Well, October 7th, sorry. I support Israel. America has no better ally than Israel. And they have every right to root out Hamas and these evil terrorists, whether they're in Gaza, whether it's Hezbollah, whether it's the Houthis, whether it's the Iranians. They live under threat of nuclear and vicious attack every single day. I also believe that our country, working with Israel, needs to do everything we can to get those children food. No American wants any child, no matter the place they live, to ever suffer. But you got to remember, we're dealing with Hamas. They use these Palestinians as human shields. So I support Israel. I support Israel. I support Israel.
Embarrassing. He couldn't even get the talking points he's paid to say right, but he made it very clear that he supports Israel just to make sure that the AIPAC check clears next election. But the Free Palestine chants, I've got to say, that gave me so much hope, because again, we're talking about a deep red district, and to see people in this district of all places outright reject the typical talking points used to justify Israel's atrocities for decades now, it really does feel like a turning point. But that's all the clips that I've got for you. There's more that I could have shared. I couldn't share every highlight because we would have been here all day, but there's a lot that I wanted to talk about but didn't get to. But overall, the negativity here was overwhelming towards him. You had a couple of people who supported him, but nonetheless, most people were not happy. Now, on one hand, I've got to say, I do give Mike a little bit of credit for even agreeing to do a town hall in the first place, because this is becoming increasingly rare for Republican politicians, because they know that people are getting more pissed off with the way their party is destroying this country. But simply letting your constituents blow off steam by yelling at you amounts to nothing if you're only going to recite scripted talking points again and again and again, which is why I have to take back the little bit of credit that I gave to him, because I feel like they'd get more substantive answers by talking to a fucking NPC or AI. At least, like, respect your constituents enough to be honest with them. Just own up to the vote that you made, but he couldn't do that. He kept lying. He voted to take away healthcare and then claimed that he did the opposite, and he looked them in their faces and lied. It takes a lot of courage to look people in the face after doing something that fucked up, but it is a bitch move to lie to their faces just to cover your ass.
Alpha male, not a beta male.